Welcome to Hot Reads, our weekly chat with Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman. My name's Tom Vandervoort, and Troy, you get your second look at the New York Giants this week. Big Blue, home to face the Seattle Seahawks. And I got to ask you, after watching the Week 1 loss to the Washington Redskins, a lot of injuries, a lot of distractions, this team is now 3-1. How do you like them in the NFC East, a very tough division?
I like them a lot. As you said, we had them there in Week 1 against the Redskins, and their only loss, and they've now won 3 in a row. And after that first game, you kind of wondered where exactly they were going to be, after the first month of the season because of the injuries that they had, and yet they've positioned themselves very well. I think right now, looking at it as far as what's happened in Philadelphia, what's happened in Dallas, they're a good team to look at in the NFC East, them along with the Washington Redskins. But I like the way that they've bounced back and they fought through some things. They've still been banged up a lot on the defensive side. They're without Justin Tuck, but they got Osi Umenyiora back last week. That was a nice win they had.
And talking about the game you called last week, which was quite a barn burner there in Dallas, it feels like sort of the cherry on top of the sundae as far as comebacks go this year. We've seen so many comebacks in the NFL this year. A lot of passing yards generated. I'm wondering, is there a reason for some of these comebacks? It feels like teams are so good at throwing the ball, especially between the 20s. Are they lacking an ability to run the ball at the end of the game, to salt games away, to put teams away?
Well, it's interesting what we've seen here through 4 games. And, we're seeing teams score points at a historical rate, a lot of offense. Quarterbacks are throwing the ball up and down the field. This league, not that anyone doesn't already know it, but the league has definitely changed, and it's not about running the football to set up the pass or the play action. It's quite the opposite. It's about teams that are throwing the football effectively first and then running the ball second. So if that's kind of your mantra going in, that you're going to take advantage of some of the rules that benefit the offensive side of the ball and throw it, that then when you get into those situations to where you do need to run it, it's out of character, and you're not as good at it. I think those 2 things are factors. I also think, one of the factors is, and we're going to continue to see this as we move forward in the years ahead, that there's less contact. Certainly there was no off season, but there's going to be less contact in practices as we go forward. And with that, I think it becomes more and more difficult then to be able to work on the execution of running the football, and teams are going to have a difficult time to do it effectively, as we've seen in the past. So when you do have a lead, to go back to your point, you kind of continue to do what you do best, and that's throw the ball. And so it does give another team opportunities to make some plays and come back from behind, as we've already seen this year.
Now, earlier this week, you mentioned Devin Hester. I know you're in Chicago at one point talking about Devin Hester and his ability to change the game from the returner position. And you said, this guy should be considered maybe for the Hall of Fame. Can you talk about the impact that a Devin Hester has on the game and about the importance of special teams in general?
Yeah, as people who played the game and then as coaches, I think we all understand that there's 3 phases to a team, and it's offense, defense, and special teams. But, for fans, special teams oftentimes gets overlooked. And even now that I'm on the other side of it, and as a broadcaster, we oftentimes overlook it because we have to go to commercials. And so we are typically going to commercials after special teams, whether it was a big play or not. And rarely are we really able to talk about the impact that special teams has and exciting players in the return game, like Devin Hester. But I don't know. I don't campaign really for anybody to get into the Hall of Fame, but I think that when you talk about the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it's regarded as the best players that have played the game. And if you talk about Devin Hester, then you're saying, well, this was the greatest return man that this game has ever seen. And if that's the case, which I believe it to be true, then it only stands to reason that he's worthy of being considered to enter the Pro Football Hall of Fame at some point in time. He's still young. He's still got some years ahead of him. And what he's already done, he had another return last week, but he's going to have more. I mean, he's not finished yet. So I think he's definitely worthy of consideration, and I'd be surprised if ultimately he doesn't get in.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too. I mean, obviously, look at the touchdowns, the big returns, and the scores. But the change in field position that a guy like that can give you, what does that mean to an offense, starting at your own 45 or midfield versus starting at the 20, say?
Well, if you just look at the percentages based on 5, 10-yard increments, when you improve your field position as you take the field offensively, the odds then of being able to convert those into touchdowns goes up quite dramatically. And so, within the return game, when you have those type of dynamic players, forget the touchdowns that he's been able to have, but just to change the field position, that's a huge bonus. And not to mention the heartache that it causes the other team's special teams, particularly the punter. There's often times we hear people say, hey, just punt it out of bounds or punt it away from Devin Hester, don't give him a chance to return it. The reality of it is, after having talked to a lot of special teams coaches and a lot of punters, it's not that simple. It's not like throwing a pass and putting it within a couple of yards of where you want to put it. Punting the football and having that kind of accuracy is very, very hard. And so to directional punt and not shank the ball or punt it out of bounds where you're only getting 10 or 15 yards on the punt becomes more and more difficult. And that's why we've seen a number of times with dangerous return men like Devin Hester still have opportunities, because that's asking a lot of these punters.
So basically, even if they don't kick it to Devin Hester, they can screw up kicking it out of bounds, and still he can be worth 20 or 30 yards just by his presence alone out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. We see that in Philadelphia also with a guy like Deshaun Jackson, and I was a part of that when I was playing, and we had Deion Sanders and the problems that he would present. So I lived it. I saw what teams would try to do and what they didn't want to do, but yet invariably they would either make a bad punt or they're going to leave one in the middle of the field, and these guys are going to get a return.
Very interesting. All right, man, that's great stuff. Appreciate your time this week. Enjoy New York City, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Look forward to it, Tom. Thanks.
All right, man.